How about that? And what a season he had. Great, and he became the first defensive player to win the Heisman Trophy. And congratulations, Charles. That is something that no one can ever take away from you. Unless you kill your wife and the waiter, in which case... all bets are off.
The late Norm Macdonald at the ESPYs making an O.J. Simpson joke with Charles Woodson. Don't murder anyone and you can keep your Heisman Trophy. This is interesting to see. Your daily sports podcast about news, narratives, takes, and gambling. I'm Nick, etc., etc. Interesting show today. So I apologize. The shows have been coming out closer towards 7:30 than 7, and the reason that is because A, I've been sleeping about 15 minutes longer than I normally do, and that really does make all the difference. And B, because I go down rabbit holes and I'm like, shoot, I got to record the podcast. So sometimes I'm prepared, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I find interesting stuff that has nothing to do with sports. Today's not one of those days. We are going to talk mostly about football today, but we're going to start with NHL news. Coming up in the football part of the conversation, USC, Urban Meyer, beat writers are super fussy because they can't get access to their weekly coaches, and that's an interesting, I don't know if that's censorship or I don't know what the hell that's going to be, and an announcement is coming about Hard Knocks. But we're going to start with hockey news. Paul Bissonnette, French-Canadian former tough guy hockey player, is going to join TNT as part of their NHL coverage. Now, Paul Biznasty, Bissonnette, is not famous for playing hockey. He was not very good at hockey at the NHL level. He was very good in younger levels, of course, and he was a pretty big drafted pretty highly. Paul is famous because of Barstool Sports. Paul is one-third of the tandem in these podcasts known as Spittin' Chicklets, but he's really interesting because he's a character. He's a bit of we'll call him, he likes the ladies, and might need to talk to a therapist about the amount of ladies that he likes. But for the most part, Biz has had two public personalities. One is that he's been an in-studio host and a color commentator for the Arizona Coyotes for a long, long time. Like he ended his career in that organization. He still lives in Arizona. He's very passionate about making sure that they stay in Arizona. And he's really good at that. But then with Barstool and Spittin' Chicklets, which I believe that Spittin' Chicklets happened first and then Barstool acquired them, with Rear Admiral R.A. and Ryan Whitney, he's been kind of able to let it fly and just be himself. The podcast is the most popular. Actually, this was true in 2019. I don't know if it's still true. But it was by far the most popular sports-specific podcast in the world. It was more popular than any football podcast, any basketball podcast, or any hockey podcast. And I don't know if that's true now with international soccer in Europe, of course, lagged behind in podcasts for a while. But it's incredibly popular. It was Call Her Daddy, pardon my take, and then it's right there with one of the most popular Barstool properties. It's preposterously popular. Deadspin is writing this article. Oh, this is hilarious. So Deadspin's thinks it's sports news without fear, favor, or compromise. So without favor, but then the headline right under that says, TNT's hiring a Paul Bissonnette for its NHL coverage proves hockey has no interest in rising above trash, which is hilarious to me because TNT also, I mean, like, what is this a double standard? Charles Barkley and, they live their lives and say what they want to say. So this is good news for me. I want to grow the game of hockey in the NHL. Paul, if you're unfamiliar with hockey and you're just kind of dabbling or whatever, Spittin' Chicklets really is a incredibly good podcast. It is incredibly good. The podcast would be fine without him. He doesn't make it good. He makes it fun, and that's what TNT needs. This is a no-brain hire. They need fame. TNT is here to make money, not to cover something with integrity. This is not PBS. So I'm all on board for this, but we'll see what ends up happening with Paul and how often he ends up having to apologize on TNT for things he said on his Barstool Sports podcast. All right, let's move along. Big news coming from Adam Schefter that the NFL is going to make an announcement on Thursday Night Football at halftime regarding the future of Hard Knocks. So people have... The obvious opinion is that it's going to be canceled because it sucks. And it does suck. And the reason that it sucks is because the team, the ownership and general managers and whatnot can review all of the footage and they can decide what does and doesn't go out. They literally are editing it, so it's just a long commercial. Hard Knocks back in the day for the 15 or 20 years or however long it's been on the air was awesome because it gave access. Well, we don't need access anymore because the players have far bigger audiences collectively than HBO does. The players are famous. Dak Prescott is famous. He doesn't need Hard Knocks to go behind the scenes and show footage of him. He can do that himself. And the footage is getting boring because everyone's got a drone. Like the drone shot was cool, but it wasn't the coolest drone shot I've ever seen. There's just one in a bowling alley that happened during the pandemic. It will knock your socks off. You really need to check it out. But there's nothing about Hard Knocks is interesting anymore. Nothing. So they're going to make an announcement, but they're going to make an announcement at halftime of the Thursday night football game. Why not just issue a press release on Friday at 4 p.m. and say, yeah, Hard Knocks is canceled. Thanks, bye. What the hell is that? And there's going to build anticipation. I think that this is going to be something far stupider. Like they're going to partner with someone and it'll be better next year or something. And unless the NFL just goes to the owners and say, sorry, you actually don't have editorial control. We're just going to put whatever we want out there. Unless that happens, this is not going to matter. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, the problem isn't anything other than it's boring. But HBO ratings apparently were up. It was the Cowboys. Ratings were up. So why would they cancel it? This is about money. This is about hype. HBO, I will say, HBO has a very strange business model for the majority of people in the business, and that is that they don't necessarily care about ratings. They care about subscribers. So what they care about is critical review. So there is a chance that they're canceling because there's critical review issues. Like with The Wire, very famously, HBO just kept The Wire for years, even though no one watched it. Well, now it's one of the most streamed shows of all time. So they care more about quality than anything else. All right, moving on to the USC head coaching search. They have been shunned, apparently, just Reddit threads and Twitter. And I'm not very good at Reddit, I'm learning. But no one wants it, allegedly, except Eric Bieniemy, who is the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. Eric Bieniemy is a black man, and as a result of that, there has been claims and whispers about racial discrimination for hiring at the NFL head coaching level. Eric has a little bit of he's got a couple things in his past that he has apologized for and needed to move on from that at the University of Colorado. I think that's long in his past, and he's been considered a genius and all of this by Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and all the guys in Kansas City. In my opinion, he hasn't been hired because he's on Kansas City, and it's A, unclear how much of that is Andy Reid, and B, I think it is unwise to hire a coach that's making deep playoff runs because you just set yourself up for failure. You have to wait for them to finish their playoff run before they can come to your team. Regardless, it is very suspicious. He hasn't gotten a job. People have considered him the number one prospect for jobs for a long time. Now he is considered one of the leading candidates for the USC job, and this is what Adam Schefter, league mouthpiece, says. Sources believe Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy will emerge as a head coaching candidate for USC. Bieniemy is a Southern Californian and has told candidates in the past that USC is one of the only college jobs that might interest him. Yesterday, I was critical about what the future of USC coaching looks like. This is perfect. This is a no-brainer. I mean, I cannot describe to you how much of a no-brainer this is. Patrick Mahomes loves him because of, obviously he's an offensive genius, but he also loves him because of the way that he is. He's been one of the things about him that people are very high on is the way he interacts with players. He's a little bit rah-rah, a little bit in your face, and less less CEO-ish. But that's because he's young. I'm not saying he couldn't coach in the NFL. He absolutely could, but I'm saying that kind of thing will hit a little harder in college, what we discussed yesterday. Secondly, he's played at a high level. When he was at Colorado was lit. If you don't believe me, Google it. They were one of the best teams in the country for about 20 minutes in there, right along with Notre Dame and Nebraska. They were so good. He was on those teams. And now he coaches Patrick Mahomes. And one of the things that he deserves a lot of credit for, and Matt Nagy deserves a lot of credit for, and that staff deserves a lot of credit for, is they were able to they put a lot of college concepts in their game plan with Patrick Mahomes, and they slowly removed it and created a pro offense. That's why they were good immediately, because they did what he wanted to do, and then they make it a pro offense. And he's just going to know what to do. Secondly, players or coaches who were former players at a high level are starting to hit a little harder because players feel like they're not being related to by coaches, and I buy that. Knowing what it takes to play on a pro football team like Eric Bieniemy does. He wasn't a great pro player. He was okay. Didn't play much. He was a great college player. But knowing that will convince players hey, I know what you're going through. I know the journey. I know all of this stuff, and I've been critical about how you're going to recruit to USC. This cannot be more of a home run, and they should honestly not even interview him. They should just offer him the job. Hey, the stuff in your past. You're sorry, right? And he'll just say, yeah, I'm totally sorry. I've been sorry for years on the record. This is crazy. And they're like, perfect, you're hired. Good for them. That's a great job because, I mean, the names have been heard and thrown around. The only one that would be interesting, if you have a job opening for a high-level college football job, your first calls are to Kyle Whittingham and Chris Peterson and just ask them, hey, do you want this? Like, what are we doing? And if they say no, then you move on. And if they say yes, you say, yep, whatever you want is fine. John Gruden, in his post-game press conference for Monday Night Football, said that Darren Waller is the best player he's ever coached, which is fascinating because he's coached the following players: Jerry Rice, Tim Brown, Brett Favre, Warren Sapp, Rondé Barber, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, and Charles Woodson. Jerry Rice, widely considered the greatest player of all time, regardless of position. So John Gruden, getting kind of old. What a thing. So we didn't talk about the Manning broadcast about Monday Night Football. They did a simulcast, the Manning brothers, and it was essentially... It's funny because all of these sports people are like, I don't know, but who wants to watch video games? All you did was watch the Mannings watch a football game. That's what Twitch is. You just twitched. You just twitched a football game, which is going to prove concept. Everybody liked it. Criticisms of it were that you couldn't watch some of the game in the early parts because it was only like 25 to 30% of the screen. It was mostly just Eli and Peyton. They were not in the same room. They were zooming in, which is how Twitch works. And then everybody liked it. They were debunking myths. They were just shooting the shit. It was awesome. Everybody liked it. Barstool Sports and the entire internet, myself included as an alumni, are essentially pounding the table demanding, and I do demand, that Eli and Peyton be forced to be in the same house at the same time to do a simulcast of Ole Miss Tennessee when it happens in October. The only problem is that like people take their colleges a little seriously, so maybe they'll actually have like a little brother fight. That would be so great. Make Archie be there. Oh no, I would love to see them get yelled at by their mom. Oh my God, that'd be hilarious. That would be hilarious. I don't know how I feel about the game. I'm a traditionalist, but I do plan, if Amazon gets rights to Thursday Night Football and they allow us to do these kind of hangouts the way they've done with watch parties and movies that Amazon owns the rights to because Amazon owns Twitch, I'm going to do that. I would love to now live stream myself watching the games. Barstool Sports and other sports books, they will live stream themselves reacting to the game, but you can't do it alongside the game. There has to be rights. So if that's the angle that Amazon is taking big picture here, that's a huge, huge win, in my opinion, because we want to be connected. We want to be connected with famous people and whatnot, and just watching the broadcast. I don't want to be spoken at. The age of broadcasting is over. The age of narrowcasting and talking to one person has begun. We're going to finish up with this. NFL coach conference calls with opposing reporters is no longer mandatory, or it is non-mandatory. So reporters in the NFL were incredibly worried that the restricted access that was changed during the pandemic would become a mainstay once the pandemic became a little bit less intense. They were worried that access in the locker room and just other kinds of access would be taken away from them permanently. And this appears to be one of those things. So there have been reporters for the Broncos who have been trying to get a hold of Urban Meyer. So when you're an NFL head coach, you have to meet with the opposing reporters. This is true all the time. I have been on conference calls with people like Chip Kelly and Urban Meyer in the past when I've covered college football. They have to meet with reporters. They have to. And in the NFL, you're required to have media availability or you'll be fined a ton. I'm just here so I won't get fined. We all know that. So Pro Football Talk is reporting that the Broncos reporters have not been able to track down Urban Meyer, and then the Jaguars said, well, they're not going to make him available. So this year, the league has made it optional. To me, this is fascinating. These kind of sessions are valuable. You ask your coach, like, hey, what did you think about this player that we're really high on? The coach like, yeah, he's a good player. Like, I mean, it's just really great for fan bases. As a Lions fan, to hear Kyle Shanahan compliment a player of mine would be great. I'd be like, well, Kyle Shanahan likes him. Kyle Shanahan's a super genius. But Urban has been tripping all over himself, so the Jags don't have to make him available, so they're not making him available. The Jags organization cleaning up a lot of stuff. They recently unfollowed like 150 people from Twitter, most of which were like super fans. Ugh, yikes. So apparently these mandatory sessions are going to stop because they weren't useful or properly utilized. The media is going to freak out over this. There's going to be so much going on right now that they're not going to properly freak out, but they're going to freak out over this. They're going to freak out over this. I don't know. I kind of care, I kind of don't. This is not the same thing as the government censoring government officials that are required to disclose shit. This is a company. the only thing that I can say, like, how do you not want more stuff? If a coach goes on a conference call and embarrasses himself, it's content. If he doesn't embarrass himself, it's content. This is a content operation. This is not a sport where the objective is to play and win. The objective from the NFL and the Jaguars is to get eyeballs on screens. That is the product. I don't understand why you would limit access at any point in time ever. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't freaking get it. But I also don't care. Like, I'm not offended. This isn't the same. This, like I said, is not the same thing as the government hiding stuff. I don't know. Whatever. People are gonna get mad about this. Beat writers getting mad about stuff is one of my favorite parts of sports. Specifically, like recently, they're mad about the All-22 film is not available in as presentable a way. So I like to make fun of beat writers for that. That is hilarious to me. I placed some early bets at FanDuel Sportsbook, including Lions plus 11.5, Eagles, Niners under. That game's just gonna be a run fest. I forget the other ones, but I think there's a lot of opportunities. We'll talk about betting on Thursday as we preview Thursday Night Football and a football weekend. Huge game. The SEC apparently doesn't play non-conference road games. Auburn at Penn State for the whiteout. That's going to be one of the meanest games of the year. It's going to be the defense. Auburn's defense, always good. Penn State's defense is just going to be mean. It's going to be a mean game. I'm going to really enjoy talking about that, and we'll get into that as the week rolls along as well. Interesting to see. Be back and better than ever tomorrow morning.